Some people have been asking how to make tapered legs on a table like this, so I thought I'd show you two methods on how to do tapers. One with a table saw and a jig, homemade jig, and one with just a circular saw and some hand tools. So the first thing you need to know about making tapers is that it's important to keep your stock square up until everything is done and ready to cut the tapers. Cutting mortises and cutting tenons is a lot easier with square stock, and the tapers are just cosmetic that are added after. So here I have another project that already has all the mortise and tenons cut, so I can show you how to lay out your tapers. So you can take your rails and plug one in, and you can see that the rail is going to end up right here. So you can take I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch below that for a straight section, and that's going to be where your taper starts. So you can take that line and transfer that all the way around the piece. Like that. Now tapers occur on the inside, typically occur on the inside of the legs. So and the mortises occur on the inside of the legs. So in order to not mess up and ruin your piece, I like to put a T and a T on the two inside faces to know what I'm going to taper. So now we have the starting point, we need the ending point. And the ending point is defined by how big you want your leg to be at the bottom. So you can set your combination square to, let's say, a 1/2 inch, and you're going to measure in a 1/2 inch from each side. And since the outside of your leg is going to remain square, you want to measure your 1/2 inch from the outside of the leg on each outside leg. And you can see here, now you have the taper starts here and ends here, and it's on these two faces. So for the table saw jig, this is all the layout you need. For the hand cutting or the circular saw jig, you also need to transfer the actual line across so you can know what to follow. So you can take on the inside edge, this is going to be one taper, which is from this point to this point. And you can go ahead and draw your line all the way down. So, I don't know if you can see that, but that line represents the taper as it goes on this edge. And then you can do the same thing for this taper. I'm actually not going to taper these legs because this is for a different project, but I have two other sample, just made out of pine, legs that we can do something similar to. So we'll just pick a starting point here and transfer that around. And then do our ending point again on both. So then this is going to be outside, this is going to be outside, and this is going to be a taper, and this is going to be a taper. So now we can take it over to the table saw and set up the jig to cut these, and then we'll do the lines on this one, and we'll cut that with the circular saw. Now for the circular saw tapering jig, it's just a piece of plywood with one of these cam clamps on it and a couple pieces of sticky sandpaper to keep the leg in place. And we set the fence up with a ripping blade such that the width of our plywood just runs in between that and the saw blade. So then we can know that this is going to be the line where the saw is going to cut. So we can take our starting point and our ending point, and we can line those up such that the starting point just hits this edge, and that the ending point which is the size of our taper, just hits this edge on a taper side. On taper, I have a taper side, and we've lined up you can't see that, but we've lined up the edge of that mark I made at the bottom of the leg, and we've lined up that. So then I can take my clamp and clamp it down so it doesn't move. And then what I like to do, since you're going to be cutting for one table, you're going to be cutting 8 of these. If you make more than one table, it's going to be more. You can take these little square blocks that have a little notch cut in them with a screw, and you can screw those down at the 2 corners. And this little overhanging piece will just be cut off by the table saw, and you can remake them as you use the jig. But at each end, you just screw these blocks down, and then you're always set up with that same taper for all of the 8-sided legs. So that's our setup now. Now the important thing about cutting tapers is you have to do them in the right order, or you're not going to have a flat surface to reference when you cut the second taper. So the most important thing for a table saw is you want to cut with the first taper facing down, so that when you cut the second taper, that one that you just tapered is now facing up and you have a flat surface. So if we set this in the jig like this, and we set up our... So this is going to be our first taper, because the other taper is facing down. And we can now double check our setup. That looks good, and that looks good. And we can go ahead and turn the saw on and cut the taper. I have a ripping blade in here. So that's our first taper. Now we can take it and rotate it. And we have the other T facing out, so we know that that's the second taper. Set it back in our jig, lock it back down, turn the saw back on, and cut the second taper. So that's it. We have our flat portion up to that line, and then we have a double-sided taper on the outside. So that's how you do it for a table saw. So for the circular saw cutting, I have a piece of scrap MDF that I've screwed just a temporary block to, a temporary fence, and then I have another temporary fence that is the same height as it, so that the base of the circular saw can sit on those two. And we're going to capture the piece, the leg in between the two, so that we can ride along have a larger surface to ride the base of the circular saw across. So this piece is just clamped to my workbench, and I'm going to go ahead and clamp these pieces together at this end, where the flat portion is. And I'm going to leave these sort of loose so that we don't get any binding with the saw when we cut through this. if I clamp on this end, we could cause it to bind as we go, as we cut the taper. So as long as these two pieces are the same level, then you should have a stable base to set our circular saw on, and this piece in the middle can be lower. I have my depth of cut set so that it just cuts into this piece of MDF at the bottom, and I'm going to cut through. Let me show you the piece. I've extended the line that we have our flat edge and our taper point, and I've extended the line to know what I'm cutting, and I've marked X's, and I have X's on this taper. So these are the two parts that we're going to taper. Just like on the table saw, we need to make sure we do this in the right order so that we have we continue to be able to cut. So we can set that up. Reclamp, make sure we're not going to bind. And then I'm just going to cut and stay a little away from the line because I'm just going to freehand this. And then we can fix it with some hand tools. So now if I free it up, you can see we cut the taper. Had a little bit of a problem at the end because I had to stop, but we can clean that up. So what I would recommend, you can clean this surface up many different ways. You can just sand it. You can use a belt sander. You can use a plane. So if we put this into a vise, we can look at our line. That's pretty close to the line. We can do some final sanding to get it right to the line. And then you just repeat the process to cut off the remaining portion of it.